We're going to have a conversation now, well, it says right there what it is, beyond panels and turbines, but more, I think, equally important about just what's possible with energy in a real-world setting. So please join me in welcoming the SVP of NRG Business Solutions, Rob Gaudette, and the Chief Sustainable Resource Officer at Kaiser Permanente, Ramé Hemstreet. Welcome. Have a seat. So, Rob, let's start with you. NRG is the largest independent power producer. You can give the elevator pitch of exactly what you do, but you have been on a renewable energy push, unlike I think certainly any utility and almost any other company in terms of the scale and the transforming the company from old energy to new energy. Talk a little bit about what's driving that.
So when we think about where energy is going and what we need to do to position ourselves for that future market, we started, as you said, as our base is a very large independent power producer. We've got power plants across the country, and then we have 3 million retail customers. And several years ago, we made the determination that renewables are going to be part of this market, and if we want to be a leader and we want to be an integrated competitive energy company, we have to have renewables. And so we've got great people who hit the renewables front from a business perspective in 3 basic products, right? Utility scale for some large customers as well as for normal utilities. We've got distributed for customers like Ramé, where we've got stuff on the ground at their facilities. And then, kind of where we're at in the kind of movement of the market, there's also community solar for business customers. And NRG believes, and I strongly believe, that we've got to have all of those products in addition to the products that come from the other side of the business, so the demand response and energy management and supply, so that we can work on and develop solutions that make sense for our customers. And we start there.
So it's a pretty broad toolkit that you're pulling from. How do you sort of sort through the technologies and the solutions? Because it seems that there's, on any given customer, any given site, there's so much that's possible in terms of ways you could go, just in
Sure.
scale and size, in technology choice. How do you choose?
So it's this is going to sound quaint, but you actually start with what the customer wants. Rather than I have a silver bullet and Ramé, you need to buy it from me. Right. You start with, what are your goals and what are you trying to accomplish? And what are you trying to accomplish not just today? And what do you need to worry about in a month? But what are you trying to do over 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? And then you look at their circumstances, because some customers have lots of property or lots of money. And they can do very interesting things with, put solar panels across a giant field next to their headquarters. Other customers live in very urban environments and still want to be a part of the kind of sustainability path. But they can get that through either a community solar program, or they could get that through contributing to a dynamic market and not have a single PV panel.
I imagine that the idea of companies thinking about energy needs for 5 or 10 or certainly 20 years, unless you're in a sort of select few and really energy-intensive businesses. But for a sort of typical commercial business, that's a new muscle to exercise in terms of, you may think about prices, locking in
Sure.
price and hedging or whatever. But in terms of thinking about technology bets, how do you work in that way, and with all that's changing, all that's just evolving constantly?
So I think that it's, as everybody's seen yesterday, today, we'll continue to see, there's lots of interesting things going on, right? Technology is changing every day. We're making advances around energy technology and how we look at and think about using energy as a business. And what it really comes down to is, if I really want to have a relationship with a customer and do my job, it's all about thinking about how you set yourself up and how they set themselves up to take advantage of some of these technologies that just aren't here yet. If you had talked about solar panels 30 years ago with a business customer, you would have seen the stat where it was $70 a kilowatt or whatever that number is. It's 42 cents now. So as you build a relationship, and you know, every customer, regardless if they're energy intensive or not, they have 5-year plans. They're thinking about what they want to be. They're, you know, we heard this morning earlier, you know, the 3 kind of components of what CEOs think about. It's, you know, what do their customers think? What do their employees think? And ultimately, what do their shareholders think? Anybody in a C-suite can be thinking about all 3 of those, and it, you know, kind of dawns on them pretty quickly that sustainability is important to all of those.
Right.
And so thinking about how you play in that space and working with a company like ours, hopefully you find a solution that maybe you don't put everything in today, maybe you think about it in 3 years, or you plan to do something as you expand your footprint over time.
So let's talk about what a customer thinks, Ramé. I mean, Kaiser Permanente is a really remarkable healthcare company in so many respects, the largest HMO in the country, but also such a leader in sustainability. I've known Kathy Gerwig, your sustainability exec, for a long, long time. I've certainly known about Kaiser a long, long time. I was born there, so that's at least 35 years ago right there. And so it's been really remarkable. But more recently, you've been you know, taken on a position on climate change. Why is a healthcare company, you know, not only thinking about but really acting on climate change?
I think it boils down to 3 words: do no harm. As a healthcare company, we need to ensure that we're not contributing to climate change, which is now having an impact on human health. You know, the Lancet Commission last year highlighted that climate change is probably the most pressing human health issue of this century. So we've made a commitment by 2025 to be carbon positive, to ensure that we're not only not contributing to that, but also hopefully starting to reverse that. Our mission is high quality, affordable health care and to improve the health of the communities we serve. So environmental stewardship is part of that, and really just one part of the total health agenda, because human health depends on, you know, economic, social, and environmental aspects, and we're trying to work on all parts of that equation.
So climate change is obviously a risk to your members, I guess they're called, well-being. Is climate change a risk to Kaiser Permanente itself?
Well, anything that's a risk to our members is a risk to us, yes. And again, you know, we're a not-for-profit, so the third stool of those interests are the communities that we serve. So to the extent that climate change impacts our members and the communities we are in, then it is a risk to us, certainly.
I mean, just in terms of having to provide more care for maybe the same amount, whatever. It actually is financial and other kinds of.
Yeah, I mean, in our model, we like to think that the interests are aligned, that our interests and our members' interests are aligned around health. The healthier our members are, you know, the healthier our business is, and our ability to continue to invest in both better facilities and research and improving human health.
So you've set a goal to be climate positive. So I think it's pretty clear that, you know, how energy plays into at least the climate neutral part. Is it simply that is the positive part primarily that you're going to be putting in more, or generating more electricity or renewable energy than you're using, or is there another aspect?
Well, we're still figuring that out, and that's why I come to conferences like this to find out what's the most cost-effective way to get there. You know, we're looking at a wide range of options now. We've done a lot of things over the last few years, and you know, learned a lot of lessons from that, and we recognize there are a lot of other options out there. So we're you know, developing essentially this list of options, considerations for each of those options. Obviously, the economic analysis around that, as well as really the viability of those options in terms of their true impact on climate.
So let's get specific. What are some of the technologies that you're using, and how are you around energy, and how are you deploying them?
You know, we've invested in both off-site and on-site renewables. And one plea I'd make here at VERGE, from the business sustainability side to the technology side, is for what I'd call a lighter weight solution for on-site renewable energy generation.
Lighter weight, what is that? Literally weight or?
Literally and figuratively. So we're working closely with NRG right now to install 70 megawatts across our facilities in California. But the current technology we have still has impediments to that implementation. And installing, and we are installing, for the most part, that's canopies in both surface parking and on parking garages. But doing that involves AHJs, authorities having jurisdiction, who often have other priorities that now they're able to insert into that process. They routinely ignore the Solar Rights Act. We have obviously disruption to our facilities that's associated with a big construction project in the parking lot. And we run into things that I didn't even, I've learned a lot, I didn't even anticipate. Most parking lots now have camera surveillance. So suddenly you're putting a bunch of canopies in the parking lot, you can't see it anymore. I mean, perhaps drones, there's the answer to that, flying around underneath the canopies. But my plea is that, I think, as Bill Gross mentioned, that there's still tremendous opportunity there, but it's not so much with what we have today. We really need building integrated systems that have a lower profile, that are lighter weight, and that of course, are still cost effective. I mean, what we're doing with NRG, we were able to do because of our scale and the ability to, get a price that doesn't affect our member, and I'm sure we have a lot of members out there, doesn't affect their rates. And in fact, the on-site generation we think is going to save money compared to the alternative.
Rob, I imagine that these kinds of relationships involve new business models, and I'm thinking of Kaiser in particular in terms of not only 24/7, but the critical nature of you can't let the power go out for a second when you're running all of the vital machinery that you have. But are there different kinds of there must be different kinds of customer relationships that you are creating now beyond simply here's a kilowatt hour.
Sure. Yeah. So the entire industry has moved from you go flip your light switch on and we'll send you a bill and you pay us. The world is very different now, and you now have customers that have needs, desires, wants that range from, hey, leave me alone and send me a bill, up to, look, we're trying to make big differences for our communities and for our facilities and for our employees, like Kaiser, right? When we think about a customer and we think about the relationships, it all comes down to, how do you use electricity? You start there. When do you need it? How do you need it? A hospital system is very different, and particularly critical care is very different than somebody who runs a manufacturing facility. And we have customers that run that range. Being able to figure out and work with the customer to make something that makes economic sense for them and enables them to interface with the markets that they're in. So California is very different than ERCOT, is very different than PJM. And each of those markets gives different opportunities.
Those are three for those of you don't get all
sorry, big
PLAs,
competitive markets.
Yeah.
With capacity markets or energy markets and demand response markets. If you have Kaiser's in California, that's pretty straightforward and expanding, but they're not in PJM. When we have customers on the East Coast that have needs, wants, or desires, you have a different set of tools. Sometimes they have less solar penetration than you might have in Southern California, but they do have markets that they can take place in or be a part of. And so trying to build a relationship and trying to build the conversation that enables customers to see what's out there and have a real conversation about how that affects their bottom line and how it affects their members' bottom lines now and into the future, that's where we're pushing hard to go to. That's what I worry about every day.
Well, yeah, I was thinking that, if I was in your shoes, I'm worrying about the speed of technology change, the time horizons, the new business models, and customer demands and needs from critical to non-critical. That must be just in terms of pushing the company and pushing innovation but not just in technology innovation, but business model innovation. Right. There's a lot going on there. How do you? I mean, are you worried that you don't get to keep up with all that's changing?
So the great part about my job, to start with, is that I'm surrounded by really, really smart people, which helps. The second piece is that at NRG, what we're not trying to be is the technology developer, the super smart guy in the garage who comes up with the next best thing. We go to conferences where we meet those guys. And what we focused on, and in particular my team has focused on over the last few years, is figuring out how to maximize and understand the customer need and have that conversation so that as Ramé progresses at Kaiser and does different things over the next 5 and 10 years, what I don't want to have happen is that we finish the solar at his hospital and then we're done talking. I would really like him to pick up the phone and say, hey, Rob, I'm looking at this,
right.
And what do you think?
So it's a much more of a relationship over time.
I think that's how ultimately this industry makes the most impact.
Sure. Let's go, we get speaking of super smart people, let's go to Elaine and Heather, see if we can get a question in.
I think one, and it's come up in several of the sessions this morning, but every company has a different community that they're dealing with, a different set of renewable possibilities in their area. And so I guess for both of you, what advice could you give to companies that are really trying to figure out how do they get beyond this? I mean, what questions, who should they be asking, and what should they really look at to be able to make these decisions? Because Kaiser, I mean, for example, you have such specific needs, right? And every single probably organization in this room is going to have the same dilemma. There's no, cookie cutter approach that they can use, but what they can ask the right questions.
Yeah, let me put it. That's a great question because I actually was going to get to a version of that and sort of combine them, which is, what do you wish customers knew before you talk to them? What do you wish they understood, and what do you know now that you wish you knew then about energy procurement and where this is going? So, Rob, let's start with you.
Set me up right in front of my customer and what I know now. So the thing that I wish that was more prevalent in the conversations amongst customers and between us and customers is that there is no silver bullet, right? There is no one solution. Every customer is different. Every situation is different. And while PV may be extremely useful in 75% of the applications, there are facilities and there are companies that are going to be able to contribute to the overall sustainability of our entire society and contribute to their bottom line in a more effective way than just slapping up solar panels.
And do other customers that come to you and say, I want solar, and that's kind of the ask?
That's the lead, right? It's the thing that people talk about. And then you start talking about, well, what about contributing into a dynamic market and having demand response or on-site dispatchable generation, and people's eyes glaze over. Half my team's eyes glaze over because renewables and what we've accomplished as an industry over the last, call it 10 to 15 years, is amazing stuff. And my point is, and what I hope that as we develop over these conversations, is that there's more to it than that, and we can all contribute, and sometimes that comes in a different way.
So, Ramé, what do you wish you knew back then that you sort of learned along the way in terms
Way
of...
more than I can cover in 48 seconds.
Yeah, well, there's that. But yeah.
Just a little advice. One is make sure you involve folks at the deck plate because they can, apply practice to theory. We come up with great theories here at conferences like this, but they're often practical obstacles that aren't insurmountable but need to be addressed and can be overcome. And the other thing that's been successful for us is a competitive process that also involves conversations with the leaders in the industry. So we've done this a few times now, and for our on-site program at the end of the day, selected NRG. But we learned a lot simply through those conversations, through that competitive process, selecting a vendor.
Well, that's, this is, again, one of many, many conversations that we're having here on stage that we certainly can't cover everything, and we've sort of scratched the surface. But I think what's really interesting is this sort of buyer-seller dynamic and how quickly that's shifting and how interesting that is and what the opportunity is for both of you and all of you in terms of really understanding that this is about building energy systems that provide much more than lighting and plug power and everything, that it's really about aligning with so many other goals. And I think those conversations that you are having, and both of you with not only with each other, but with the market, are just really important to get beyond the I want solar to how do we really think more about energy in a very, very different way. So thank you for spurring that conversation. Please join me in thanking Ramé and Rob. Thank you. Thank you.